Well, hi everyone. Welcome. Today I am here to speak to you on advanced case management for the utility and energy sectors. My name is Rob Dumont and I will be your speaker today on this new and exciting topic. So today's webinar should take approximately 30 minutes. I'll be starting with an overview of who we are and what the current situation is that we're seeing with our clients in the energy, oil and gas, and utility sectors. And then from there I'll talk about case management. What it is and why it matters. Then we'll explore the value that case management brings to energy and utilities organizations. And then finally, we'll look at a couple of case studies for organizations like yourself that have implemented Case Manager already. So first off, a little bit about Archeo and who we are. We're a small firm with a very specific focus. We focus entirely on enterprise content management, or ECM. In total, we have more than 150,000 hours of ECM experience, which has contributed to many successful projects. In all of these projects, our overriding tenet is that any content management solution is only successful if the end users actually use it. So in order for an organization to receive the benefits that they desire from their content management solution, the users themselves must see value and improvement in their daily work. And at Archeo, we call that creating elated end users. You may have been asking, what is a content management solution? Well, all ECM solutions are based around the creation, movement, usage, and general management of files such as documents or emails. Here are a few such solutions that are common in the energy and utilities industries. A very good example would be engineering standards management. An engineering standard is a document that outlines what a firm expects from any internal or external engineers that are working on a particular type of asset or in a particular discipline. However, the process of identifying that a standard is needed, drafting it, routing it for expert review and approval, and then managing its ongoing life cycle of scheduled and requested revisions until it's finally obsoleted requires either a solution or a small army of very smart people to manage it all. And this is just one example of a content management solution. Now this slide lists a subset of the more than 40 clients for whom we have implemented over 100 successful projects and created countless elated end users. As Archeo specializes very specifically in enterprise content management, we do work with many industry verticals, but you'll see that energy and utilities are well represented with clients such as BC Hydro and Pembina Pipelines on our list here, just to name a couple. Now, I can't say this is true for every organization, but speaking with upper management in our existing client base, we're seeing a common theme of pressures that affect the energy and utilities industries. Top of the list is often the fact that unlike simple processes in, say, finance, many processes in energy and utilities are not structured and not predictable and have significant variance. These represent increasing costs and risks to organizations as regulatory, competitive, and customer demands and expectations increase. On top of this, all organizations, but particularly utilities, are asked to do more with increasing complexity, yet with less resources and fewer people, which tends to lead to a struggle to stay ahead of the curve and be proactive to market and regulatory pressures rather than be reactive. And all of this comes as organizations continue to see knowledge and experience and expertise lost as retirements accelerate. So it's also been well documented and publicized that only about 20% of data is in structured sources, i.e. it fits nicely into a database, while the remaining 80% of information and knowledge is in unstructured and semi-structured forms such as documents and emails and forms. What people have been finding recently is that the same holds true for processes. About 20% of processes are structured with very predictable steps and outcomes, but the remainder 80% of processes are unstructured. They have semi-predictable and unpredictable steps, involve ad hoc steps, and are not near as predictable as that 20%. Now, we see this as especially prevalent in the core activities in utilities, energy, oil and gas, manufacturing, and a few other industries. Since so much of an organization's outcomes rely on processes and information, this is a major factor driving the concerns and pressures that we discussed on the previous slide. So how did folks try to tackle this in the past? They got a bunch of smart people, subject matter experts or SMEs as they're commonly called, and business analysts or BAs, together in a room, and they tried using Post-it notes and various other tools to model out business functions. I'd hazard a guess that pretty much everybody on the call today has been in a room similar to this one here at some point in their career. The problem being, this often obfuscated the larger flow of work. And where the flow of work was actually modeled, it was ugly. Exceptions, optional tasks, ad hoc tasks, these are all very difficult to model and even more difficult to implement with traditional business process automation tools. So for the organizations that did go all the way, they ended up with a diagram not unlike this one, with paths and sub-paths and reroutes and backsteps and so on, and implementing this into a traditional BPM system is very, very expensive, cumbersome, and difficult. In the end, the status quo tends to win out in the vast majority of situations. Workers continue to struggle to process their work in multiple systems, such as ERPs and CRMs, spend time tracking down experts and information, and basically trying to do the best that they can with a situation that is not optimal, not consistent, and often highly inefficient. So not too long ago, a few smart organizations came out with neat new ways to deal with this, and eventually a name was created to describe these solutions and agreed upon, and it was called case management. So what is a case? I'm sure you've seen this diagram before, or some variant of it, where process and people and information are all linked together, and the same is true in a case. A case starts as a request, perhaps from an employee, an outside entity like a customer or a regulatory body or a vendor, or it can be initiated by an event such as an incident. A case will always involve one or more knowledge workers. A case has the same need for consistency as any other workflow, but unlike a traditional workflow, a case has a variable flow of work, with some parts structured, others unstructured, others completely ad hoc. But in general, it is advanced either by business rules or by the judgment of smart people that everyone works so diligently to hire. A case depends on information, such as documents or emails or forms, and typically involves correspondence and collaboration between the various people that are involved in a case, working on a case, or subject to the effects of the case. And then finally, in a case, the organization will need visibility into both what cases are presently being worked and what their statuses are, as well as historical information so as to improve how that organization operates. Or, to put it in context, these are all generic processes that are cases. Some you'll see aren't specific to your industries, but you can likely imagine other processes very similar which are not on this wheel. Now, one thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the three main segments, as almost all cases can be described as some type of investigative case, such as a regulatory approval or an investigation, a service request, such as a request for electricity or a new development or a land right-of-way management, or incident management, such as health, safety, and environment, or perhaps a local power outage. So we learned what a case is. What is case management? Well, obviously, case management is the process of managing a case, which involves being able to handle a flow of work, all of the content, documents, emails, etc., that are associated with that flow of work or used by that flow of work or provide information to that flow of work. There are collaboration requirements in case management between the people that are working on it, and quite often social aspects as well. There are rules to determine what steps are involved in a particular case versus another case, and events that can be used to either trigger the creation of a case or trigger the advancement of a case. Case management typically will involve integration into line of business systems, whether that's an ERP, such as your SAP system, a financial system, perhaps you have an asset management system, such as IBM's Maximo tool, and need to integrate that and information in there and processes in there into the processing of a case. And then finally, the ability to gain visibility into those cases for monitoring what work is being completed today, whether it's short and common cases like simple customer service requests or longer processes with a much longer duration, like maybe a rate case change request that's going to go out to a regulatory body, and then doing analytics on those cases after the fact so that you can get better at processing them in the future. So we're going to move on to some use cases. So for our clients who require case management, Archeo works with IBM technologies, primarily because analysts are very clear that IBM is an undisputed leader, both in case management and in enterprise content management as a whole. So you can see here that Gartner puts IBM in the upper right quadrant of their Magic Quadrant, and Forrester also has IBM in the upper right area of the Forrester Wave for both ECM and for case management. Now, for case management, IBM's offering is creatively called Case Manager. I'm not sure if you're familiar with how IBM names their products, but they're very, very creative and really out there. So their case management product they creatively call Case Manager. So the IBM toolset really brings all of the pieces necessary for full case management without needing to tie together different vendors with disparate systems. Now, along the bottom here, we see the parts that are included with Case Manager from IBM. We've got the ability to handle content. I've mentioned this a few times, the emails and documents that are associated with the case or the information that people need to go out and search on and do research on when they're working on a case. There are collaboration and social elements to IBM Case Manager that allows for folks working together on a case to be most effective through talking to each other. There's workflow and rules capabilities so that work can be routed and more importantly, it can be routed with business rules determining what needs to happen and who needs to do it in each individual case. Event management for the advancement and initiation of cases has built-in native integration capabilities to make it very easy to tie your case management solution into the line of business solutions that will feed information into and derive information from the results of the case. And then, of course, monitoring and analytics for the ongoing visibility into past and present cases. Now, all of these things feed up into three main user experiences. The first being how the case is built in the first place, and that's the case design toolset. This basically allows for the business analysts and the subject matter experts to get together and design out most of the work involved in building the case. So IT is only involved in a very minimal way when the case is first implemented. And often as cases change and business processes change and requirements from regulatory bodies change, requiring minor adjustments to cases, many of those changes can actually be completed by the business analyst without needing to go to IT and get into the queue and wait the 6 or 8 weeks for it to actually get done. Second here, so that's case design. Second here is the case runtime, which is where the magic actually happens, where folks are actually being assigned work, interacting with systems and processes and other people, and is really the primary user interface. And then over here on the right, we've got all the case analytics tools, which allows folks to slice and dice all the information that's being collected and audited as the cases are being worked on, getting time views and keyword views and all sorts of other key information to really help them understand what the organization is doing, and more importantly, how it can be doing it better. Okay, so let's take a look at one case that we hear all the time from our clients, which is health, safety, and environment. So this is a case that's initiated by an event or an incident, and which can range from something very severe and drastic, such as a pipe explosion where people are injured or perhaps even killed, right through to something more mundane like a minor slip or fall. Now, obviously, there are steps and processes that need to happen for any type of HSE event, including an investigation and remediation, but there are a lot of optional steps too, which will depend on the type of case and which a knowledge worker needs to look at, judge, and decide if they need to happen for this particular case. So let's say somebody is working several feet off the ground on a ladder, and they end up slipping and falling and landing hard, and they need to go get checked out by a physician, but fortunately they're not hurt and they can return to work the next day. So first off, there's likely policies and procedures that your organization mandates must be followed and must be adhered to consistently. Depending on the type of incident and the outcomes, there may be various things that need to be approved, such as leave or facilitating the return to work. There may be work with a WCB board or an insurance company or regulators or even environmental agencies. There will likely also be investigative steps, such as looking at the audit history to see when that employee last reviewed the company policy, whether they were following it, and whether the organization needs to adjust either the policy itself or how it's communicated to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. And throughout all this, we're not dealing with that complicated spaghetti map with the system struggling to deal with an adaptive and unstructured process Instead, we're allowing knowledge workers, those smart people that you spend so much time hiring, to use their expertise to make decisions and to advance the case. So in the past, implementing such processes manually or using traditional business process software was cumbersome, inflexible, and inefficient. So with Case Manager, organizations finally have the tool sets to efficiently and flexibly tackle cases such as this one. So using software like IBM Case Manager, energy and utility organizations are better able to handle the complex and variable steps that occur, including those you see on this slide. Whether it's controlling and facilitating the communication of information, or keeping the history and records that will be required after the fact, or relaying real-time info to facilitate a crew dispatch or some type of incident response, these things can all be coordinated and managed by a case management solution. So incident management, which we just discussed, is really just one area where there are cases in energy and utilities. Here's a list of other areas where there are service requests or events leading to knowledge workers relying on information and judgment to advance the flow of work to its conclusion, all while maintaining visibility and an appropriate level of standardization and consistency in the organization. You can probably think of others in your organization. So, Rob, you talk a good story, but is anybody actually doing this? A lot of you probably know that insurance and finance and some other such industries have already achieved really high levels of automations that you'd probably love to replicate, but is such a thing really truly possible in energy and utilities with all of the challenges we've discussed earlier? Now, the answer, of course, is yes, or I wouldn't have brought it up. There are actually quite a number of such organizations, and I'd like to focus on two specifically here. I unfortunately can't use their names, but I'll do my best to describe what they were able to accomplish through utilizing these tools. So the first case study here for CASE is actually a U.S. federal regulatory agency. Although not a utility themselves, I selected this case for today's webinar because their needs really mirror many of the utilities' needs that we've worked with in Canada. They're subject to freedom of information laws, and they have a need for policy and process management, and similarly a need to respond quickly to build up a response package for an FOI request. So with CASE, the agency went from just storing content to creating a base of trusted content, and they used IBM Case Manager and other IBM tools so as to drastically streamline their efforts and the resources required in order to respond to FOI requests. So now they're able to utilize analytics tools, and what they're seeing is they're starting to better understand key aspects of the process. So not only were they able to streamline it in the first place by implementing Case Manager, but they're actually using the data that they're building up to further improve it and are starting to realize even greater efficiencies than they initially realized. So my second one here is for an energy producer. They're actually an energy producer for a large metropolitan city in the U.S. And basically this energy producer needed to streamline the process of complying with the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, requirements. And in order to comply, they needed to really enhance the visibility and control they have over security access, both to core company information and data, as well as to physical assets of the organization. And then they needed to be able to quickly respond to reporting requirements from NERC when they were requested. So what they did is they worked with IBM Case Manager software and were able to implement an employee lifecycle management environment. The software allowed for them to do rapid prototyping of the solution, which drastically shortened the implementation time, while also at the same time increasing the feedback from their end users into the process and resulting in a much better solution in a much shorter time. Through this, they were able to streamline the onboarding and employee move cases when they were moving an employee between responsibilities or promoting them, and were able to derive much better visibility into changes and access to their assets, which allowed them to respond very rapidly and stay in compliance with NERC audit requests. In the end, they were able to reduce their effort while reducing they were able to reduce their effort while increasing their compliance to these. And because of the rapid modeling capabilities of Case Manager, they're able to adjust quickly as processes change and requirements change and legislation changes over time. More importantly, this instance of a case in this organization is actually serving as the first prototype for many other cases, both in the energy producing organization as well as in other agencies for the city itself. So they're actually taking what they've done here, using it as a base, and starting to deploy it across other city agencies. So great benefits and reusability there. So that concludes the case studies, and with it, my speaking portion for today. I'd also like to encourage you to think of the cases in your organization, how they could be streamlined, automated, standardized, how you can make them more efficient through the use of case management tools. Today in this webinar, I was barely able to scratch the surface of what case management is and what IBM Case Manager is capable of. I hope that what you did see today and learn was beneficial to you, but we certainly do have more additional info if you're interested. I'd be very happy to provide you with case studies, white papers, and other technical information on IBM Case Manager. Just reach out to me and let me know, and I'll send those across to you. Finally, before we get to the questions, I am very interested in your feedback, not just how we did today and how you found this, but I'm also very interested in whether you'd be interested in seeing a second webinar that's a bit longer that actually shows the software, whether you'd be interested in a live software demo of a particular type of case or cases that you're interested in your organization. So if you're interested in seeing some of those modeled in Case Manager, you can type those into the GoToWebinar window, just the same way you would do a question, or you can fire me an email at this address. So my contact details are here on this slide. You're absolutely welcome to reach out to me.